Okay, so this is the build that I use when I fight bosses and when I kill the Ubers and when I am running greater rifts that are like 39, 40-ish. Um, I'm using the Wrath of the Waste set without any, no Royal Ring of Grandeur. I don't have space for Royal Ring of Grandeur on my build. I use Krelm's Buff Bracers because it makes you immune to knockback and stun effects. I've got diamonds for resistance on all of my gear currently. I may switch it out at some point, but right now I'm not too interested in doing so. I want critical hit damage, but I do not want critical hit chance because of the rings that I'm using. Currently, I have a Schaefer's Hammer that happens to be ancient. Almost any ancient weapon will do. If you have a furnace that is ancient, that'll do just fine. I just use Schaefer's Hammer because it happens to be better at this moment. I would like an ancient furnace to eventually replace it in this build. My rings are the Convention of Elements and Broken Promises. The reason that I use Convention of Elements is that I do use a multi-elemental build on my skills, and I use the Broken Promises because every 5 consecutive non-critical hits I get, my chance to critically hit is increased by 100% for 3 seconds, which means that I can eliminate having to roll critical hit chance from the rest of my gear. Amulet doesn't really matter as long as you have good critical hit damage rolling on it. I'm running the gems Taeguk, which is pretty much, if you're running a Whirlwind Barb, there's no reason not to run Taeguk, because the fact that Taeguk makes you wind up and eventually grow both your attack and your defense at the same time. I'm running Mutilation Guard to prevent melee damage, and also the secondary effect makes it so that you can move unhindered through enemies at 30% life or less. I'm also using the Esoteric Alteration, which gives you 30% non-physical damage reduction. In other words, all magical stuff is reduced. And when below life, your resistances to cold, fire, lightning, poison, arcane. In other words, all resistances go up by 75% except for physical. When you look at my skills, oh, right, I almost forgot, very importantly, I'm using the Dread Iron Belt. This is part of what ties this entire build together without using the Bull-Kathos weapons, which would be necessary otherwise. Ground Stop causes an avalanche. That's because I use Earth and Might as my first passive over here. I also use Juggernaut, which reduces the control impairing effects that are landed on you, and you have a chance of gaining 20% of your life every time that they attempt to control you. I'm using Ruthless and Tough as Nails. Ruthless can be traded out for Superstition. I have Brawler on my necklace. Another very valid passive that you can do is Relentless, which you can usually, you're going to probably run Relentless over Tough as Nails. Over Tough as Nails. Sorry about that. But anyways, Relentless is much more important because when you do get to that threshold, it's going to combine with your legendary gems and get a synergy to where you become nearly unbreakable. The only thing that will actually kill you when you have your full stacks of Taeguk and Relentless going on is massive, massive spike damage, and you have to be really uncareful for that to really hit you. I'm using Battle Rage. Battle Rage can use either Bloodshed or Marauder's Rage. I tend to prefer Bloodshed because I plan on wading through battle as much as possible. Warcry using Impunity because it gives you additional magical resistance, but it gives you all resist, so it also gives you physical. I'm using Avalanche with Glacier, which gets triggered by Ground Stomp due to my belt. My Ground Stomp is the Trembling Stomp with fire. You can also use the Wrenching Smash if you prefer a little bit more control. You can... Almost all of these are valid. The reason I'm using Trembling Stomp is because it does fire damage and I'm spreading my elements around. On purpose, because of how Convention of the Elements works. My secondary is Whirlwind with Wind Shear because I prefer moving around with right click, and Wind Shear gives you Fury for every enemy that you hit with it, which gives you additional energy generation to complement Earthen Might. It'll make it so that as long as you're fighting 2 or 3 enemies, you will be getting energy no matter what weapon you use, so that Bull-Kathos is not as necessary. I use Rend with Mutilate because Mutilate is cold damage as well as Avalanche, but also because Mutilate does it does a debuff on the enemies. It chills them and they take 10% increased damage from all other sources. Because of the fact that you have 2 cold, you have lightning, and you have fire, that's 3 of the elements that cycles through Convention of the Elements with Barbarian. But due to the set bonus of Wrath of the Wastes, whenever you're whirlwinding around, you're shooting out these tornadoes that go all over the place, and those tornadoes are always going to hit for physical. So if you are cycling through your skills properly, you'll be hitting with almost every single element all of the time, which will make it so that Convention of the Elements is boosting your damage by a minimum of 150% at all times, a maximum of 200%. And that is how this build manages to handle GR 41 plus easily when you're soloing. So yeah, I have that noted and saved. Speaking of which, do you guys want to just go ahead and do the trials properly and go into the deeper, greater rips? Riffs? / applause. I'm gonna have to add the command for that. I'm gonna make that a segment, and I'm gonna add a command on Nightbot so that it'll be easy to reference to that. I'm gonna go ahead and fight because it's really funny because this build starts